Hello and welcome to another episode of Hilltop HomeGrown. Today I want to talk to you about self-sufficiency and what it actually means to be self-sufficient. Now it's quite a broad ranging term. For some people it's cutting out the shop completely, for some people it's just being self-sufficient in a particular crop, such as these lettuces behind me for example. Now what I would say is it's entirely up to you what level of self-sufficiency you come in at. For example, we know that stuff like oats, wheat, barley, for stuff like flour and porridge and things like that, we don't have the space to be self-sufficient in those, so we're quite happy to buy those from the shop. But things like the lettuces, which you can see you can get a lot into a small area, particularly with the cut and cut again lettuces, like the Lola Rosa that we're growing here, you've got the space to do it in such a small area. You don't really have to worry about kind of gardening in a small space. So that's what I want to say about self-sufficiency, and with self-sufficiency it takes a lot of planning. You've got to make sure that you look ahead and you plan in terms of what you're going to be needing for the year. So it's just thinking ahead and thinking, right, well I'm going to need X amount of broccoli, so I need to plant X amount of seeds, and always allow yourself a bit of an emergency, a bit of a contingency in terms of kind of what you're planting and what you want to have coming out of the ground. Because if you've got too much, fine, let it go to seed, save the seed from that, and you don't have to spend the money on seed the following year. You might want to plan for that anyway, so you might want to put in yourself an extra 10 garlic cloves into the ground just to make sure that you've got the same planting that you need for the following year. It's entirely up to you, but the thing you've got to make sure is that you plan to plant enough. Like the lettuces for here, for example, we've planted these will last us a couple of months, just while they're good and in the ground. We can pick them, keep them fresh in the fridge for a while. But then we'll need to have another crop of lettuces go in to make sure that they last us another couple of months. So we've already got those planted elsewhere in cell trays, getting ready to go. It's the same with your other salad greens, it's the same with everything. You've just got to plan ahead, think about what you're doing, and make sure that the self-sufficiency that you're aiming for, that you're going towards, is going to be suitable for you, your family, and whoever it is that you're growing for. Now just as an example, the crop selection is key as well. For example, these Lola Rosa lettuces are cut and come again lettuces. So you pick the leaves off them, you eat the leaves, and they will come again. You just got to be careful to make sure not to kill the plant at once, but that's what you do with these lettuces. Now the main thing to remember with the crop planting is if you want a head lettuce, that's one plant, that'll do you one amount of lettuce, done. So you have to plan for that. The cut and come again, you have to remember, it might last you a couple of weeks, but then it will die down, and you have to plant more. You've got to have that plan. Get yourself a little diary, get yourself a little whiteboard, whatever it is you want to do, spreadsheet on the computer, anything. Just make sure that the planning is there for you. To help you with this, what we're going to do is over the next few weeks and months is we're going to take one crop at a time, and we're going to look specifically at what you get from each one. So in terms of the amount of harvest you get from it, in terms of the amount of seeds you can potentially harvest from it as long as you have a good crop, and what the plant need in terms of space requirements and things, to see if it's something that's realistic for you to be self-sufficient in. And that would be the key aim moving forward. So we're going to do a series of videos looking at the major crops, things like your garlic, your lettuce, your onions, your potatoes, your carrots, things like that. Because some things, to be honest, even though they may seem easy to grow, even though they're quite useful to grow, like your potatoes for example, they can take up quite a bit of space. So if you're trying to be self-sufficient for the whole year, sometimes you might have to say, well actually that crop's going to take up too much room compared to something else. I want to have that bought from the shop for me from a reputable organic seller or something like that, rather than using the growing space yourself, where you could fit something in like Lola Rosa lettuce in a much smaller space and you get a much longer lasting crop from it. So those are the things you've got to take into consideration. Those are the things we will look at moving forwards for you. Another thing we're going to look at is we're going to look at how to kind of reverse grow things. So if you start looking at, say you want to make a tomato sauce, you know, for your pasta, we look at, well, for a start you need tomatoes, you might want to grow some herbs, some basil, things like that. So have a look at the self-sufficient way of growing a jar of tomato sauce, which might cost you 60p from Tesco's, or you think, well actually I've grown it myself, and we'll look at kind of the amounts you're going to get from each crop as well. You know, see, again, it's going back to the kind of whether it's worth it type thing, but growing your foods that you would normally buy, it's well worth growing them to make them yourself, because you might be surprised you can get a lot of jars of tomato sauce that you can make yourself for quite a reasonable amount of growing space. We'll also look at kind of the best ways of maximising your crops for your self-sufficiency. for example, growing upwards rather than growing outwards, which we'll look at in another video, and also what I like to call raised level gardening, which I'll go through in another video with you. But the idea is to maximise the most out of your space, because if you're like us and you're on a limited amount of space, and I'm aware some people are on a lot more limited space than we are, and there are still ways in which you can be entirely self-sufficient in certain aspects of your life, especially in terms of your food production. So that's what the best thing I think is going to be for everyone moving forward. So that's what we're going to do in this series of videos, and it's going to be, as I say, ongoing for a few months. So that's the way we're going to look at it moving forward. While I've got you here, I'll look quickly at the Dolorosa lettuces, and the lettuce, and being self-sufficient with those, as you can see, they come up quite nice. They're quite big lettuces, really, in terms of the leaf that you get, and because they cut and come again. I mean, we've spaced them kind of 15 centimetres apart, these lettuces, in nice rows, and you can see the big size of crop that we have had from these. And these have been harvested a couple of times already this year, and the way in which we've done it, we pick the outer leaves, they come back, they grow again. You pick the outer leaves, they come back, they grow again. I mean, we've probably got about 2 or 3 weeks left on these lettuces now, if not a touch longer, to be honest, in terms of really good harvest. Then they'll start to die down a bit, and we'll have to make the choice of whether we pull them out and put new ones in, which will probably be our preferred option, or whether we kind of stick with them until they've completely gone. The other thing we'll look at is space management, because you can see there are some gaps where, say, something hasn't come through or something has already died, and we can have a look at what we can interplant in between them and get multiple crops in one bed at a time. So again, you're really going to maximise your space. So that's the kind of thing we're going to look at moving forwards. Now because these lettuces have been quite an early crop this year, I mean, these were only planted beginning of January, we're now just into April, and you know, we've got fresh food on the table all day, all the time, fresh salads, fresh leaves, right the way through for us. So again, these are the things that we're going to look at in some of the more detailed videos, looking directly at individual specific crops for you. Right, so that's everything for today. So again, like, subscribe, all that kind of thing. Thank you very much, and I'll see you soon.